Thank you all very much for coming this afternoon.
Fantastic, thank you. Thanks.
You can all have a seat. I'm delighted to welcome you to the Memories of the Queen's Game. I'm very pleased that everyone was able to join us this afternoon for what I think is going to be a very special event. I hope you had a chance to enjoy our tea/light lunch. We're very pleased to have 4 presenters with us this afternoon. 2 gentlemen representing the Terps on the football field, and 2 ladies who are in the royal box with the Queen. We've asked each of our presenters to speak for about 10 minutes, and then we'll have time for questions. Following that, we're going to show the documentary that was made in 2007 to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Queen's Game, called Maryland's Queen for a Day. So there will be a short break after the presentation is over. If anyone does need to leave before the documentary, I encourage you not to do so, because I think it's a lot of fun to watch. But I certainly appreciate that you might have other obligations this afternoon. Again, thank you for coming. I'm going to give a brief introduction for our 4 presenters, and then you all can kick it off. Margaret, who you see here on my right, was seated in the royal box for the Queen's Game, and she actually had a chance to meet the Queen and give her 2 gifts that were for her children. Maggie graduated from the university in 1968 with a degree in theater and dance. While she was raising 4 children, she continued to teach dance until 2006. Her husband, Tom, who is sitting up front here, graduated from the university as well in 1969 with a degree in business and worked for Xerox until he retired. We're very pleased that Maggie and Tom have traveled from their home in Kingston, Massachusetts to join us this afternoon. Carole Elkins Neal, Maggie's sister, moved to College Park in 1954 from El Paso, Texas, with her parents and her sister Maggie when her father, Wilson Elkins, became president of the University of Maryland. Carole attended Northwestern High School over on Adelphi Road, close to campus, and then departed for the sunny climes of Florida State University for 2 years. Turned traitor a little bit, I think. She returned to her Terrapin roots for the final 2 years of her undergraduate studies, and I don't know whether Carole will reveal why she had to come back. She had to come back. She graduated in 1963 with a degree in elementary education. Carole taught 6th grade in public and private schools for 3 years, and then married and had 2 children who have given her 7 grandchildren. She began teaching piano privately in 1974, first in University Park, and now in Lewis, Delaware, where she moved in 2003. Although Carole does come back to College Park and University Park frequently, we're especially delighted to welcome her back today for this very special afternoon. Verardi, sitting next to Carole, was a sophomore when he played in the Queen's Game. In 1957, Football Media Guide described Gene as, quote, an excellent all-around player who could go at quarterback or halfback, one of the fastest and shiftiest men on the team. Good runner and strong defensively, unquote. Along with Bill Slade, John Stitt, Bill Joyce, and John Forbes, Gene was considered, quote, the cream of the 1956 halfbacks, unquote. Gene graduated from the university in 1961 and later earned a master's degree in mathematics education. He taught mathematics in secondary school for 2 years and went into information technology for 36 years. He has 2 sons and 3 grandchildren, 2 girls and a boy. 2 boys and a girl. Gene has been retired since 1999, and he tells me that he has been enjoying it more than he ever thought. He traveled all the way from Catonsville, Maryland to join us this afternoon, the closest Terp home base. Dietrich, who is here on my right, was a sophomore center and linebacker for the 1957 Terps. The media guide that year described him as a young but capable player. 1 year later, the guide noted that Roy had, quote, a fine disposition with an intense desire to play. Roy also graduated from the university in 1961 with a degree in history and went to work for IBM, retiring in 1991 after a 31-year career with the company. Roy also told me he's traveled widely. He's even visited the island of Bermuda 38 times. The first time on his honeymoon with his lovely wife of 48 years, a former Miss West Virginia University, with whom he has 3 daughters. Roy tells me that, quote, life is full of decisions, and it helps if he can make some good decisions some of the time, quote. He also told me his top 3 decisions were, first, to attend the University of Maryland on an athletic scholarship where he obtained a great, well-rounded education. Second, to join IBM for his career path. And the third was to ask his wife to marry him. To keep busy these days, he drives BMWs around the Northeast. That sounds like a great way to spend retirement to me. And we appreciate Roy for taking time from all of that to travel south from Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania to join us this afternoon. And with that, I'll turn the program over to our speakers. So everybody has about 10 minutes, and then we'll take some questions.
I'll start because I probably have the least to say because I was only 11. Oh, okay. Can you hear me? I was only 11 years old when this happened, so I'm not sure where my exact memory is and what I've seen pictures of and been read and been told. So I will try and just tell you what I exactly do remember. My sister remembers more details of what went on in the household before. I know it was exciting, and I know we had lots of company coming, and of course they had a big function at our home before we went to the football game. But we had lots of those things going on at our house often, so I'm not sure I even thought of it being anything exceptional. And we went to a lot of football games too, but I did know that this one was different, and that we were. My mother was very excited about having everything done properly and right, and what we were to wear and all that. So I remember getting dressed and ready to go and being driven from our house to the football stadium, which is not very far to go. So there was obviously something different about this particular one, and what made my day different than anybody else's is that I was asked, I guess because I was a child, to present 2 gifts to Queen Elizabeth at halftime, and the 2 gifts that I gave her were for her children. I do not know what they were. I don't know if I was ever told what they were, or maybe at some point I was told and I don't remember. But I went up and I presented her the gifts, and I did say, something like, these for your children, and I don't know if I curtsied, or I do think there's a picture here somewhere where I was holding her hand or shaking her hand. I'm not sure, but then I just gave her the presents and she thanked me, and I went and sat back down. And I just remember sitting there watching all the people in front of me. There was my father. I think I was 2 rows behind, and sitting next and talking all through the game to the Queen. And then there was Governor McKeldin, who was very vocal. I can't remember. Very vocal. And then there was my mother and Prince Philip sitting next to him, who was very good looking at that time. And my mother talking to Prince Philip. And then the different people, some that I knew, I don't know how many, Charlie McCormick, some of the members of the Board of Regents, and just kind of watching it all. And then at the end of the game, all the football players, coming up to the area where we were sitting, and then going home. And from then on, I don't remember it being talked about a whole lot. I know it was in a lot of different, people asking questions, but I was only 11. I wasn't focused on that kind of thing anymore. It was over. It was over. So I'll pass it on to my sister because she has more of the peripheral memories.
Would you like to?
In 1957, I was 16 years old. I was full of myself. I was a cheerleader at Northwestern High School. My boyfriend was on the football team, and one day at the end of September, my mother and father said to me, I guess we were told at dinner one night, that the Queen of England and Queen Elizabeth and her husband would be coming to Maryland because she wanted to watch a football game. She was a sportswoman, and she was real curious about the rules of the game. And I guess my dad had been quarterback for the University of Texas, so he was the person I suppose they chose to tell her about football. But they told me that I would be going to the game, and we would be going and getting new clothes, and I said, well, when is the game? And they said October 27th. And I said, no, I'm not going. I can't go. We have a football game and that's it. I'm not going. And nobody raised their voice or anything. They just said, yes. Well, I can't go because I'm a cheerleader and I have to be there. And they said, no, we've already talked to the school. So I had there wasn't anything I could do except put on a big pout, which I did for about 3 weeks. And we went and got new clothes, and if you see pictures, you'll see our new finery. And I had to wear, my mother told me I had to wear a hat because everyone was wearing a hat. And I said, that was even worse. No hat, I'm not wearing a hat. Oh yes. So I had a little white beret, which I didn't like at all. So the day of the game came, and we had luncheon at the house, and everybody was so excited. And the person that was most excited, I think, and was the happiest and having the greatest time of all was Governor McKeldin. I mean, he was just over the moon. And so I was kind of getting into it, actually. The meal was pretty good, so maybe that's what did it. But I just saw all these people having a good time, and then at the end of the luncheon, my mother and father told everyone, before you get back into your limousine, make sure you go to the bathroom because you cannot leave the box until the Queen leaves. So you were there. There was protocol for the Queen, and I told my mother, that's a good reason for me not to have to go too. I mean, do I really have to go to this? The game's today at high school. Anyway, so we got to the game, and it was an exciting day. We drove in the limousines around the bottom of the stadium and got onto the stand, which was so royal. It was just a platform with steps going up the side, and that's all it was. We all sat in folding chairs. And I had a good time. Actually, I had a good time. And at the end of the game, which was excellent, thank you, when the team rushed forward, I just got into it. But both the Queen and Prince Philip looked like they had a great time. They asked questions. The only thing I can remember, my dad said, she had this coat, this fur coat, and I wasn't very impressed with that coat until I found out that it was $15,000. And then I looked at that coat a little differently. Anyway, so I'm still doing with pout with my family, not with everybody else, just with my parents. And so we got back into the limousine, and all the other limousines took off and went home wherever they were going. But we drove out of the stadium back up the back road to the house, and at that time it was just a plain field. There was not even the soccer fields, I think, were there. It was just grass. So as we were going up the back lane, I buzzed the window down on that limousine. I took that white beret and I frisbeed it out onto the field, and nobody said a word to me. So I would just like to say I thank God for such wonderful parents who had a whole lot more foresight than I do. And patience, yes.
Either one of you,
Next.
It doesn't matter.
kick it off.
Good afternoon. My name is LeRoy Dietrich. Thanks very much for taking the time to come, and I want to thank Ann for setting this up because this is really fun. Not too much you can do in your life 60 years after something happened, but Jean and I might have the same perspective, and it's different from everybody else because there was a lot going on, and we understand it. And but that was not in our focus. Our number one focus was the University of North Carolina Tar Heels, and I didn't care who was in the stands. I was worried about that Tar Heel right across the way that might want to knock my head off, and I was going to try and do the same thing with him. So our focus was on the game and the preparation, and Gene will probably go into this, but the coach of the Tar Heels was Jim Tatum, and he had had quite a successful career here at College Park. I remember coming here as a freshman, and Jim Tatum's name was on the curb. here, there, over there. Everywhere you want to park your car, Jim Tatum had his name on the curb. So that's where Jim Tatum parked his car. You know, where's that 900-pound gorilla sitting? Anywhere he wants to sit. So he was really good, and he was going to come back with his team, and I'm sure he wanted to make a big impression and defeat the Terps. And we weren't having the great kind of season that everybody expected. So consequently, it was an intense week of practice. So when it got here, all of a sudden, the Queen's here. Oh, good. And that was about it. Now here comes the Tar Heels, and we better get ready to get your head knocked off. So it was very, very intense for us, and I enjoyed it. Gene had a great game. He, I don't know, ran the ball 7, 8, 9 times, had close to 50 yards on the ground. One of my roommates, or our roommate, Jim Joyce, carried the ball 2 times for 11 yards, and he scored the last touchdown of the game. So that was neat. You know, by being close to him, I took some of the glory. Oh yeah, I was blocking for Jim. No, I never got on the field. But it was a fun game, and it was very, very nice that we had the opportunity to win. But I'm sure everybody else was excited about the Queen and what color was she wearing, and you know, did she have flowers, and you know, all that kind of stuff. And in the video, that if you happen to stay around and catch it, was really cool, because on the way leaving the game, somehow, you know, she was only 33 years old, and I was 19 at the time, so, you know, 12 years difference. I think I might ask her out for a date if she wasn't married. But anyway, she said, let's stop at that giant supermarket. So they stopped at the supermarket, and they locked the doors, and she started walking around and grabbed a young mother with 2 kids and say, how do you shop in here? She says, well, come on around and I'll show you, you know, and here's some meat, you put that in your, and this was entirely new to her way of thinking. And the way I understand it, she asked the manager, how much business does this store do? And when he said 6 figures, $100,000, she elbowed her husband and said, did you hear that? So for a 31-year-old Queen of England, she was very astute, not only in the ways of the world, but just the way business went. So I thought it was really remarkable. I'm a history major, and I met this very nice young lady in the first row, and she lived two doors or 6 houses from Dr. Gordon W. Prang, and he was one of the best, he was the best instructor I believe I've ever had. And he was really neat. He did his doctoral work in Berlin, Germany from 1936 to 1939. He said, that was not the best year. He says, and as soon as I got my degree, I got out of there. But he gave such in-depth classes, and he was just superb. But when I look at everything, I look at it from a historical aspect. Ann said, you know, we happened to vacation to Bermuda many times, and people say, why'd you go back to the same place? When we got into a nice rut, we just stayed there. It was like going home to Bermuda. And I would always look back, you know, 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, and you get a lot of perspective. But I thought, okay, I'm just going to do a little research on Queen Elizabeth. She's 88 years old now. Same person that was in the stands down at Byrd Stadium. I thought, 88 years old, she's looking pretty good. She still dresses great, don't you think? I mean, fantastic. And then I read that she woke up in bed one day, 56 years old, and there's a gentleman standing in her bedroom. I don't know if you remember this, so, you know, does she panic? Oh no, not the Queen of England, you know, be calm and carry on, that kind of stuff. So she said, well, why don't you sit down here in the bed and we'll have a little chat. So for 10 minutes, she engaged this guy who's in her bedroom with no security, just chatting. I thought, that lady has she's very firm and strong. And then 1 year later, she was in a parade riding her horse, and she's a very good horsewoman. Somebody said she was a great athlete, and I think she was interested in athletics. So anyway, all of a sudden, some nut jumps out of the crowd and starts firing a gun. Bang, bang, 6 shots. They were blanks. I don't know what he had in his mind. Maybe it was his 15 minutes of fame, but you know, they said she was the perfect queen. She just calmed her horse from getting too jittery and continued on with the parade. So the queen, now that I realize it, if I had known all these facts back when we were playing, I might have left the bench and gone over and sat next to her. But she was pretty cool. But so those are my perspectives from the game. That we mainly were on the game, but I certainly understand there were so many people that had so many aspects. Are you going to get your hair done? What color are your nails going to be? You're going to get the Queen of England, the British. And I did notice from that video that is going to be shown by Anne, the card section was so good. And the guys who were in our year, they did the card sections, and one of them was her royal insignia, E2R squared or whatever it is, and then the Queen of England, the Union Jack, the flag, and she thought that was so great. She had the card section do it a second time. How's that for a rerun? But she's pretty neat lady. So again, it was a great day, and glad we could celebrate it. Thanks for Ann for bringing us up. So thank you. Gino, your turn.
Okay, first of all, thanks a lot, Ann, for inviting me. And thank you all for coming. And before I start, I want to let you know something. Maybe this is the first time you've heard it, but word got around that you did not want to go to that game. And yeah, it did. When you said it, I didn't remember it before, but when you started talking, I remembered that the oldest daughter did not want to go to the game.
More spread than I thought.
Well, here's more. You're throwing the head out the window also was around. So, so I remember that. But I didn't know it until you started talking about it, and it just jogged my memory. Yeah.
I'm going to forget it after today.
I'll never forget. But anyhow, my recollection of the Queen coming to Maryland was in the summer of 1957. I was at my home in western Pennsylvania, the little town of Freeport, about 25 miles north of Pittsburgh. And I received a letter in the mail from Coach Mont. And in that letter, he, of course, all the players got it. But in it, he referenced the Queen was going to be at our North Carolina game. And the only thing I remember, I can just figure that probably the only thing, that was to build up morale and to prepare us for the season. But fast forwarding to game day, well, before that, whenever we got back to college in August for our training, 2 weeks before the first game, I'm sure that the Queen's game was mentioned, and it probably wasn't mentioned until the week of the Queen's game, and I think it was only to build up morale and to get us ready for that game. I'm sure it was going to be a special day for Coach Mont because he was the assistant coach under Jim Tatum here at Maryland. So the day of the game, up until that time, other than just him mentioning it, I'd have to say very few times, really, because our concentration was always on the next game, the game we were going to play. And the day of the game, what I recall, I don't recall a whole lot. I don't remember ever seeing the Queen that day. And as Deech said, we had our mind on the game and not on everything else. But I do remember going out for the pregame practice, and coming out of the door, I glanced over to where the Queen was going to be, and there was hardly anybody in the stadium at that point in time. And of course, she wasn't there. But that was only a glance. I guess I was just curious as to what was going on. And the next time I remember going out, we had gone back in the locker room, and then leaving the locker room to go out to play the game. I believe that I glanced over again to where the Queen was, but by that time there were a lot of people, and I really didn't see her. And after that, during the game, I don't know. I may have looked over there, but I don't remember. I just remember those 2 times that I looked over there. But I'd say that my concentration was on the game, and that was the focus. It wasn't the Queen, as Dee said. Now the players on Maryland sit on the side where the press boxes are, but whenever we were playing, we were on the opposite side. We had the sun in our eyes. I guess we were supposed to be good hosts or something like that. He said that. But even being there, and she was across the field, I just don't remember looking over. It wasn't a big deal from the standpoint of the game going on in our mind. And then after the game, of course, we won. We were very happy. The co-captains, I believe, carried Coach Tommy Amont over to where the Queen was sitting, and we all went over there. And again, I don't remember seeing the Queen, and the only thing I can say is all the other players were taller than me, so I probably couldn't see over them. And I think it was a brief visit. It must have been for security reasons that we had to hurry up and get back into the locker room. And but it's a memory that I have, and I guess it's being here is. I'm glad I've survived so far in order to be here. But one of the things that Ann said, how did it affect your life? And I had to think about that, because I thought, well, the Queen coming, it wasn't a big deal to us other than she was there. Our game was known probably nationwide because she was there, not because of us playing. And but what I guess what it did for me is it boosted my confidence. I had the week before we played against Wake Forest, and we beat them too, and that was the first game during the season that I had a chance to play a lot. Before that, I was going to be redshirted, and then I ended up breaking my eligibility. I think it was against Duke, but anyhow, I played in that game, and I had a good game, and I was identified as sophomore of the week for that game. And in this game, I guess I had a pretty good game. I didn't realize it then, but I was a runner-up sophomore of the week, and that gave me a lot of confidence in myself, which I didn't have before, and really throughout my life. That has been kind of something that I noticed that's a negative about myself. But that was another step, and that was a big boost, because that was a big deal. A guy from a small town in western Pennsylvania, it was just a big deal. So I got a lot of publicity as a result of that, both here and back home, and so that just gave me a boost in my confidence. So I think that's pretty much it that I remember, and give some perspective to that game.
I did look up Roy's stats. Let me put the microphone on. I was curious to know what Roy had done in the game. Not Roy, Gene had done in the game, because I knew he had played. You'll see some footage of him playing and the documentary, and we have a photograph of him running the ball. So I went back and looked at the game day stat sheet, and we dig that out. Okay, Gene had 5 carries for 42 yards, attempted 1 pass, which was incomplete. I'm sorry.
Did you have to mention that?
Well, it must have been like a halfback option, right? Sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't.
Yeah.
And he had a punt return for 3 yards. We do have the actual stat sheets in the archives. We have a lot of documentation of the Queen's game. The slideshow that we were showing you all as you came in is a very, very tiny fraction of the total number of photographs that we have. It's one of the events that's always fascinated me. When I first came to work here at the university in 1985, people said, oh, the Queen of England was here for a football game. I thought, well, this is just amazing. And it's something that I've always enjoyed talking about, doing exhibits about, having the chance to feature at events like we have had today. It's been a real thrill for me. Thank you very much, panelists. We do have some time for questions from the audience. There is a mic there because we are recording this program. So if you all do have a question for one of our panelists, if you pop up to the mic, that would be terrific, or I can pass my hand mic around as well.
I'm curious, you mentioned, is it on?
It may not be on that. There we go.
You mentioned security, and I now, security is just so intrusive, and I just wondered if it was really mild by modern comparison, what you noticed about security before that? Any of you?
Well, from our standpoint, we weren't even aware of any security.
There were a couple of bodyguards, and that was it. And when the football team rushed toward the platform, they were a little nervous. You could see it on their face, but there wasn't much.
You can see in some of these pictures.
And
Yeah.
I just will say, I'm Pat Kniff, and I was not at Maryland that day, but I lived right off of Michigan Avenue, Queens Chapel Road, and was a kid. We all came down to see the Queen's motorcade, and we were as close to her car as I would be to a car coming down Campus Drive on the sidewalk. I saw no security whatsoever, as I recall, as a child, no security. Nobody checked us out. We were just all there, and she was headed to the grocery store at where Eastern Avenue.
Yeah. If you look at some of the photographs from the game, you can see like some of the M15 guys right in the front, a couple,
That's what I was.
but not a whole horde. Like
Nothing.
now, if you had the Queen here, I mean, it'd just be hordes and hordes of people, and you wouldn't get close to her. Margaret probably would have never shook her hand. It would have been all very controlled. One other funny story that Louis Goldstein, who was a former comptroller of the state of Maryland, told often was that he was there at the game, and you can see him in the photograph of Carole with the white beret on that's in the slideshow. You can see Comptroller Goldstein there on the left of the photo, and his son's name was Philip. And so Philip decided he was going to climb down through the crowd to get to Prince Philip and give him a tie clasp, I think with his father's name on it. And so he rushed his way all the way down through the crowd and got to Prince Philip to give him his gift, and the security people just went bananas. And I don't know whether that came through in the box or not, but Louis often told that story. Philip created quite the commotion. That's Carole.
Do we know why the Queen came here for a football game?
My understanding is when the Queen was here for an official state visit with President Eisenhower downtown in D.C., and as part of that trip, she had expressed an interest in seeing a typical American sport. So the State Department, in order to fulfill that request, started to look around and figure out how they could accommodate that. And of course, Maryland was playing Carolina the weekend that she was here, very close to campus, very easy to transition. When we did our exhibit for the 40th anniversary in 1997, we collected a lot of letters of memory, and I know Carole gave us some. And, we got a letter from Albino Kuhn, may be a name that's familiar to some of you, but Dr. Kuhn was the vice president under President Elkins at that time. And I think your dad must have been away. The call came into the president's office, the State Department is calling, they want to bring the Queen out here. And so they were really the ones that approached the university and made the arrangements to help fulfill a wish that she had expressed on the trip.
It was my understanding that it was really Philip that wanted to
Yeah.
see the game.
Oh.
Yeah, I hear it both ways, but no matter what, the request came from the couple that they wanted to see a typical American sport. So we were very fortunate to have a game that weekend. I mean, it's not often that you're going to have that opportunity. Alice?
Is there documentation from anyone in the archives about the logistics of and who organized all of this, who was in charge, and what was involved in arranging all of this? It sounds like a big.
I think it was a very big deal. I'm sure there were a lot of meetings, as we can all imagine. One of the things that we do have in the archives, which is really fun to look at, is the seating chart for the Royal Box. We had a big sketch of who was going to sit where, and what kind of decorations were going to be here and there. And there's a list of who's going to be sitting in one row, who's next to whom. So there was a lot of course, a lot of planning that went into it. They also enlarged the press box for the game. They had a press box, but they actually built onto it because they knew there would be a lot more print media and people that would want to attend. So there were a lot of preparations that were made. We do have some documentation on that, yes. Any other questions? Jason?
This stuff about the Queen is all well and good, but I want to know more about the football game. You guys were talking about being focused on North Carolina. I'm curious, what was the game plan for North Carolina? What kind of game did you anticipate? Did it turn out the way you thought it would? That kind of thing.
You want to handle that one?
Well, I'm sure we had a plan. What it was, score touchdowns, and as far as detail, we always had briefings during the week and the day of the game to identify their strengths, their weaknesses, what we could do and what we couldn't. But specifically what that was, I have no idea, because I had to worry about the next game, and that you kind of erase all that because that's done. So I don't remember specifically. I'm sorry, I don't.
I do remember there was a fullback from the Brooklyn area of New York by the name of Phil Perlow. And Phil makes a great interception in the game, so you'll be able to see it on the video. And I don't know how many yards he returned it, but it was a game-changing play. And then there was another game-changing play in that there was a halfback from West Virginia, Teddy Kirshner. And they said Teddy had one short leg and one long leg, walking on the hills in West Virginia. I'm married to a mountaineer from West Virginia, so I'm used to all the jokes. But Teddy went through the line, and he was always a good cutback runner. So when he went through the line on the left-hand side, you think, oh, okay, now what? But all of a sudden, he shot off to the right. He was on his way. I don't know how many yards he got. 80, 90, 82 yards.
81.
But it was a great run, and those two big plays were the ones that turned everything around to the Terps' point of view. And the sophomores, really, Gene and my roommate Jimmy Joyce and a lot of other guys played very well in that game. And we were scared to death of Tatum because he was such a good organizer, recruiter, and game planner that I don't think we had much of a chance of winning, but all of a sudden the tide and the momentum went in our favor in the second half and worked out pretty good.
Yeah, one thing that I remember about Tatum that I heard, I don't know how credible it is, but evidently they were planning on winning. North Carolina was planning on winning that game. They thought it was going to be a pushover. And Coach Tatum had arranged for them to stay over an extra day so they could go into DC and see the sights. And I heard that what happened was after the game, he canceled all that and he went right back to North Carolina. Like I said, how true all that is, I don't know, but I got that information. But now I know it was true about her not wanting to go to the game. I always thought it was just rumor, but now I know it's true.
Well, we've also heard too that Tatum never spoke of the game amongst his family or friends again. But he just would not talk about it anymore. Didn't want to hear about it, just didn't want to consider it ever again. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if that wasn't true too.
How did the rest of the season go? I don't remember. I went to the games, but I don't.
I think we had about a 500 season. We lost the first 3 games, I think.
Yeah, we did.
First 3 games, then we won 2, and then after that, I'm not sure. We lost. I think we usually had around a 6-4 or 5-5 seasons while I was playing.
I don't even remember what the score was.
21-7. Yeah, 21-7. Big victory. Any other questions? Allison?
What about in the documentary, it says that the North Carolina team was sick with the flu.
Well, there was a big flu epidemic at that time. A lot of our students here at the university were sick. I think about 1,000 students actually were sick at that time with the flu. So that wouldn't surprise me either. But there might not have been some effect. A win is a win now, so come on.
Whenever you're playing, you don't think about being sick. So they were doing fine.
Yeah, I don't remember whether it's in the documentary or not, but we do have one little clip in a newspaper clipping in the archives that talks about the Asian flu epidemic at that time.
Well, that was another thing about Jim Tatum. He was a very strict coach, and if you were sick, from what I've heard, if you were sick, you still played. You didn't tell him you were sick. So.
Terrific. Okay. We'll take a quick break. We'll get our ESPR panelists if they'd like to sit up front. We'll get the documentary going.
And can I just say one thing?
Yes, absolutely.
I think that this whole thing, if you bring it together, the best thing of all about this particular event was that it put the University of Maryland on the map. I mean, there were pictures in every paper all over the world, and I've got a huge scrapbook full of them. And it's just everybody knew what the University of Maryland, where it was, and what happened,
Right.
and that you won.
And we had a good football team, right?
There was also a big piece in Life magazine. I don't know if you remember that. Life magazine actually sent a lip reader to sit in Byrd Stadium across the field from where the Queen was, and the lip reader watched her with binoculars throughout the game and wrote down everything that she said. And so that was talked about in the article in Life magazine as well. So, oh yeah. It was a big deal, but we have newspaper clippings, as Carole said, it was in newspapers all over the country. From San Francisco, from the Midwest, from the London Times. There's a tremendous number of newspaper clippings in the archives about this event. So it's probably one of our best documented events in university history. Okay, why don't you all move up front?